Welcome to the GTA Advisors Podcast. We interview Greater Toronto Area business owners, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. Our goal is to bring Greater Toronto Area residents the best advice from our community's brightest minds. Now, here's your host, author, entrepreneur, and real estate innovator, Robert Caruso.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the GTA Advisors Podcast. I'm Robert Caruso, and this is our first live video podcast. Well, I would say live, but our first video podcast that we're doing with one and only Peter Power from Power Pest Control Inc. You service all over the GTA. From what I'm checking out your website, you have some pretty amazing stuff on your website. You have a fantastic blog. You have some YouTube videos that you're uploading on a regular basis, and very interesting. Graphic in some ways, but you know what you do is pretty cool, and we need your services. So obviously you're here. We can see you're ready to go. Maybe before we talk about you professionally, Peter, but maybe just give me a little bit of your backstory. What did you do? What do you enjoy doing in your spare time? What did you do? Where did you grow up? And what did you do before you started getting into pest control?
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Robert. So pretty much, the first question is like when I started out, I went to I took I think when I was 19, I took an electronics diploma program. It took me 4 years to finish a 2-year program, and I found it wasn't for me. So then I went back to school and I took business at Centennial College, and I got my marketing diploma. Right. One of the things I realized that with business, you can go almost anywhere, right? So I moved from job to job. I was working for Frito-Lay as a truck jobber. It was kind of a sales position, but it was more like, delivering the chips, putting it on the shelf, merchandising, understanding how the retail environment works. I found that wasn't satisfying enough, so then I moved on into the trucking industry, and I became outside sales rep for a truck freight forwarding company. That didn't work out too well because the environment for me was a little too harsh. It was really, really hard outdoor sales. So I realized that if I was going to do any kind of sales, it has to be more relationship based, where I'm providing a service for someone. And so what happened, I got hired at a computer company, a Lenovo, and I was selling computers to inbound customers from the States. But then I realized that during the recession, people were buying less and less computers, and they were laying people off. So then I decided I wanted to find something a little more stable. And just as a miracle, I was walking out of the office and I saw a pest control vehicle pop by me, and then I decided, okay, you know what, I want to try pest control out. And then I realized that this is something that I want to do. So I did some research on pest control. I realized that it's a very stable industry. There's people always have bug problems. So I decided that, this is something I want to do. And then I got a chance to work for the big Canadian company. I worked there for a couple of years, and then in 2013, I started my own business. And ever since then, it's been going great. I'm really, really happy. I've done things differently than what some of my other competitors have done, but I've been able to utilize all the transferable skills that I've received, since I graduated from electronics and from my other program, which is business, and it's been quite amazing. So just developing those interpersonal skills that you cannot get from college or university.
Absolutely, yeah, that's quite a story there. So. You must have had a lot of challenges along the way.
Correct.
Yeah, especially when you're going to business on your own. So maybe go through some of the challenges. What has been some of the biggest challenges you've had?
Well, for me, I'm more of a worker in a sense that I love to work with people. I like to go to your house, do the pest control, solve the pest problems, have a conversation with the client. Where my biggest challenge has always been is paperwork. So, whether it's, organizing paperwork for tax purposes or organizing paperwork for, the client and trying to stay organized. That is the admin stuff is not the fun part of the job. The fun part of the job is hopping in the truck, Someone calls me, I got a bug problem, I got a bed bug problem, I got a cockroach problem, and I go out there, and my job is to eradicate that problem and help the client prevent the problem in the future.
Absolutely. So let's pretend we can go back in time before you started your actual business. Knowing what you know now, is there any piece of advice you would have given your former self?
Yes, absolutely. Now, when I started out, I was really nervous. I was, it's kind of funny. You work in the industry, for a certain amount of time. You know what you're doing, but then as soon as you go on your own, you forget that, maybe I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this. And then when you start getting your first, second, third, fourth client, then everything is fine. One of the things what I should have done from the beginning, and I should have eaten the costs, was organization of paperwork. Like, I'm using a specific program for the pest control industry in terms of invoicing, chemical tracking, and so forth. I also use Evernote, and I also use Google Calendar. I started using Google Calendar, but I didn't use Evernote until year 2. And Evernote, I found was very, very useful for me because, say for instance, I have an invoice for a client. I would then, when I go back to the office, I would scan the invoice. It would be uploaded on Evernote. So if the client ever says, well, I lost my receipt, I would email them the receipt right from my phone. So I wish that from the beginning I had those organization tools from the get-go. So that I can hit the ground running and go a little further. But you know what? It's all in perspective right now. I think that, but I had to make these mistakes, and I'm glad I did, because it's made me a better person.
Absolutely. That's Evernote is something that I use religiously myself, and it's great for keeping track of all your clients and all the things you've done with your clients. Absolutely, just like you said. Take me to a time when you thought, "Wow, I'm making a difference."
Good. Okay. So I put some thought into this in the last couple of days, and with what my job and what my role is, or my career. I shouldn't say job because it's a career that I've chosen. It's a way of life for me. I find when people call, and bed bugs is the most traumatic thing that anybody can go through. It's more psychological than anything else. And some people on the phone, they're in tears, they're emotionally distressed, and my role, more than a pest control exterminator or a pest management professional, is a low budget psychiatrist. So I have to, work with the client. I gotta, talk them down, let them know that everything's gonna be okay. I'm gonna help them solve the problem. There's nothing to worry about. And then when I come on site, I walk them through how this is, this problem, how we can fix it, right? And let them know that it's okay and it's not their fault. Sometimes things happen, and then from there, once I kind of see that they are more stable emotionally, because when people make decisions irrationally, when they make decisions emotionally, they tend to make snap judgments. And I prefer when my clients are of right mind. So because I don't want them having buyer's remorse. I don't want them feeling that, oh my gosh, this person took advantage of me because I was in this state of mind. So the first thing I do is to calm the client down, explain to them what the problem is, have them ask me as many questions as possible, because I rather them ask me the questions up front before, once, instead of, after, the payment, and then they don't feel that they've gotten their value. So I want to make sure that before any money has been transferred, that they feel that they've gotten the value that they deserve. And then, we move forward from there. So that's pretty much, how I deal with those kind of things.
Yeah, I can imagine, like, the worst thing in the world is having pests that you need to get rid of ASAP.
Correct, sir.
And I have been in a couple of situations myself, maybe not so extreme. Thankfully, I guess in one sense, living in Vaughan, it's a little bit less of a problem up here. But still, it's, you just want the problem solved yesterday. Right?
Correct, sir.
And,
Yes.
And the stress, I can't even imagine the stress that's on somebody when they have a problem, and it's, they don't know what to do. Right. So, it's good that you're able to talk them down, make them feel like, calm them down, to make them feel like they're everything is going to be fine. And I can imagine the psychological part of it.
Yes.
It's one big sort of feat that you have to make people overcome, is make them realize that you're going to help them. Everything's going to be fine. So,
that's right.
Yeah. So let's dig a little bit deeper. So let's imagine that we were to drop you on an island. Okay.
Okay.
No other pest control business. There's no such thing as pest control. They don't even know that they have a pest control problem until you arrive, sort of thing. And you want to explain to them what the benefits of them using your business is. List some of the benefits of them using your services.
Okay, so pretty much with using the pest control services, the two most important things, obviously, is that you want to control any quote unquote pest populations. Now, what I would explain to them is that, okay, well, what is a pest? So a pest is anything that that would make your life uncomfortable. So what I would explain to them is that if nature is not controlling these vermin that is invading your lifestyle, then someone like myself would have to come in and help control that population. And I'll give you an example of how this is important. Back in the Black Plague, right? People thought that cats were considered with voodoo, so they would kill the cats. Now, what happened was that there was an overpopulation of rats. Now, the rats did not cause the Black Plague. The fleas that were on the rats caused the Black Plague from them biting them. So what happened is that millions and millions of people have died. So when they realized that the cats were essential to controlling the population of the rats, which would then control the population of the fleas, the Black Plague started. The people were able to survive that plague because the cats were essential to controlling the population of the rodents. So that's one major benefit to that, and also keeping a clean environment. So if you have a home, and if you have, say, for instance, cockroaches within your kitchen or your eating and living environment, right? One of the things that cockroaches will do is if you have a large infestation, you will develop a specific asthma, breathing problems and so forth. And also with cockroaches, they also have a bacteria that can lead to salmonella poisoning. So, keeping a clean environment is essential to making sure that that you have very few vermin that is going to infest your living environment. So keeping a clean environment and also controlling the pest population that nature cannot control, or there's an invasion of a foreign species, that invades your island. You know what I mean? Someone has to be there to make sure that there's an equilibrium there, and that's where my role would come in.
That's pretty amazing. You don't think of these things how bad they can be. I'm sure you've heard of. I'm trying to remember the name of the disease, Lyme's disease, where
correct. Yes.
Where the mosquitoes will go on to maybe cattle or some sort of animal, like maybe moose or something like that, and they take their blood, they inject it into your skin, and all of a sudden you've got this debilitating disease you got to deal
correct.
with, right? So
yes, it's
almost like the same thing that you imagine that in your home, like that that kind of thing where it can create all like asthma, like that's pretty crazy stuff. So. Maybe before we start to wrap up, now you've already mentioned that you use Evernote.
Yes.
Any other apps or any other kind of resources that you use on a regular basis that would you couldn't live without?
Okay, well, Evernote is number one. I'm a very simple person because I work for myself pretty much. I have a immense staff that I contract out. So if you work for yourself and you take a high volume of calls, because my business is mainly seasonal, like from spring to summer, that's when most of my calls come through. In the wintertime, I have my rodent calls. So one of the ways that I stay organized is that I hire a call center. Those contract call centers, they charge by the second and so forth. So they filter out all the calls that are not necessarily pest like calls. Say for instance, someone's calling for sales or something, they direct it to a different channel so I can answer that later. Sometimes someone has a follow-up question, it's directed there. If I have a sales call, then they email it to me, text it to me. So that helps me stay organized on the road. Evernote is amazing tool, and I use Evernote for business. So because it's you could save a lot more, and you can upload a lot more per month versus the free version. But the free version is just as good as well. Google Google Calendar is great. And a lot of the Google apps that they have, like I think it's Google Sheets, Google Docs, and also Google Drive. And one more thing that I forgot to mention is Dropbox.
Maybe while we're on the topic, I know you've said that you have a live call center that's taking calls.
Correct.
We're just just started March, and maybe you can give the listeners maybe a little bit of advice this time of year, because a lot of people are going to listen to your podcast this time of year as we release it. So what kind of problems are out there right now with pests? I mean, is there anything there's any preventative sort of stuff people can do in this time of year?
Absolutely. Well, spring is coming, so right now people they store all their stuff in the garage. I would highly recommend to go through the spring cleaning, try and empty out as much stuff out of the garage, because you don't want any vermin, such as rats, rodents, and so forth, nesting in garages and so forth. Well, the weather is going to be warm. People are going to say, well, the animals are going to be outside, but that's not necessarily the case. Rodents breed all year round. Okay, do an exterior inspection. Check your windows and doors. If you have wooden frame windows and doors, and if they're rotting, it might be time to replace them, because if water is leaking into the wooden frames, carpenter ants could be nesting inside there. Carpenter ants do not eat wood; they actually bore through the actual wood. So you want to take a look for that. Make sure your eaves troughs are clean, because with the roof line, when the water rains onto the roof, it gets into the eaves trough, and if the eaves troughs are clogged, guess what's going to happen? They're going to overflow down the side of the wall, and things like windows and doors that are made of wood, because a lot of people have old wooden windows and doors, it'll start rotting them out. So you want to make sure that you always clean your eaves troughs. Do your spring cleaning for your eaves troughs. Make sure your grading is done properly, so that the water is moving away from the house, never into the house, because if you get leaks into the basement, insects are going to be drawn to it. So, because insects are drawn to water. Like, one of the biggest problems that the clients will get year round, and even in the springtime most are soy bugs, centipede, silverfish. Now, these pest problems are really hard to eradicate. But one of the things I say to clients, if they have a lot of mulch around their property, because mulch provides water retention. So I know that the gardens look beautiful, and when it rains, it slowly seeps in there. But you got to remember, water is essential for all life, so all insects are going to be drawn to that, and the more water retention that's closer to your home, the more likely you're going to have insects inside your home. So it's kind of a 50-50 thing. Do I remove the mulch and remove the planters and not have the insects, or do I have a lot of mulch and have a lot of soil, and I water and have a beautiful garden and I deal with the insects? That's your personal decision. But that's where I come in. I call it market correction. So I come in and I'll do the exterior sprays for the client, and provide pointers on how to mitigate it for the season.
I know there's these termites. I mean, you didn't mention anything about termites. I know that Toronto or the GTA does have issues in certain areas.
Correct.
Is there? I mean, I know preventing them is impossible if they've started. Is that right?
Yeah, it's hard. Termites are hard. It's not one of my specialties. I have a gentleman that does that right there, and that was one of the things I should have mentioned. For areas that I do not specialize in, I have people that I work with, and that was one of the things I should have mentioned with Evernote and Google Calendar. One of the things you can't live without is a good network of great pest professionals or great professionals. So just like in your business, you network with painters, plumbers, and so forth. So you're kind of like a one-stop shopping. So if you have your regular clients and so forth, you say, call this guy, call that guy. It's the same thing for me. So when people ask me for stuff, I like to give free advice. So if someone says, I have a wildlife problem, I say, well, call my guy in this area. Or, for termites, I'd say call this guy. But going back to termites, yes, termites is quite problematic, especially around the beaches area and so forth. And once they're into the house, it's very costly to remove them. It's quite a laborious process. But one thing though, if the person is going to hire someone with that is going to do termites, they should read as many reviews as possible. Make sure they have their proper licensing, because it's a special license for termites. I'm a licensed structural exterminator. In order for me to do termites, I have to have a termites license, because there's a lot of work. There's a lot of things you got to do to actually get rid of termites, and you just can't leave one termite. You have to get rid of every single one that's inside the property.
Yeah, and that's I mean, people are, I mean, being in real estate, as you know, people are buying houses in that beaches area. They're paying an exorbitant amount of money for them.
Correct.
These old houses, they're going in, doing a little bit of renovation, or, a lot of renovation or whatever, but maybe they're not getting rid of all those termites, are they? I mean, like, that's...
It's a possibility. It's a very large possibility. So, and right now, the way how the market is, you can't do inspections anymore. It's like, it's no condition. So the thing is, people like this is another thing too, because I've had a few clients where they just bought the home, they did a walkthrough. And then they find out they have cockroaches. They find out they have ants, and the people who are selling the place, they know about this, but they hide the problem. And really, quite frankly, because the pressure right now is this is where it goes back into emotional selling. Everybody buys based on emotion. They use their logic to back it up now. And real estate's all emotional, right? So if you love that kitchen, you love that bathroom, you'll do anything to get that home. And then once you get that home, you say, oh my gosh, there's a leaking pipe, or the tap doesn't work, or this doesn't work, and then the vision that you had is not quite the vision. So and that's kind of the problem, right? And that's what I've noticed with a lot of these kinds of situations where in the springtime, when people are doing the renovations, they bought the home 2-3 years ago, they never noticed anything, and so when they open the wall, it's like opening the Pandora's box. You just don't know what you're going to expect, and that's kind of the problem that we're facing. That's the problem that I'm facing the GTA all the time. So especially with no conditions, right? So the market that we're in at this point in time.
It's scary. I know. I've been, thankfully, knock on wood. Anybody that I've helped buy homes, I mean, if they've had issues, it's always been sort of like fixable, minor issues. But yeah, it's scary, and it's happening more and more, especially in Toronto. These older homes, I feel bad for these people. They're just going in there, overbidding, they're paying a fortune, and then they have pest problems.
Correct.
We're hidden, just like you said, right?
That's right.
Wow, that's pretty good. I'm glad we got a little bit into a little bit of that, because there's a lot of people that just don't realize what's going on in the background, right? So
correct.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah. What I was gonna say is like like, I guess when people are like, this one thing that if people are going to be buying homes, that, I know the pressure is always great. You have your husband, you have the wife, and so forth, but it might be a good idea to carry, if you have a friend who's really good with seeing these things, you know what I mean? They can point these things out as they're going along, right? So that's what I usually, like, if someone is doing a purchase or something, if they have a friend that has a lot of experience with homes, that might come in handy as well.
Well, we do that. I mean, we will tell them to hire a home inspector before putting in an offer in, right?
Okay.
They could do not the full blown inspection, but
correct,
the most vital parts of the inspection. And now I'm thinking they should get a pest control guy in there.
That's right. Yeah, even so, like something quick like that, like, they could have someone come in, just do a quick inspection, just give them the feel of what things need to be done and so forth. Like check the attic for mice, because a lot of the times the mice will go up the brick walls into the attic. That's one of the big problems, right, that I find with a lot of homes. People don't realize that, something simple, when the roofers build roofs, they don't install drip edges, right? Mm-hmm. I talk to a lot of roofers, and they say, well, it's not required. But the drip edge is very important for keeping insects out. That's what I find. And also, they don't also caulk where the soffit meets the brick wall. So the mice will squeeze up underneath the spaces between the weeps where the bricks are, and go up in the attic, and they'll nest, right? So that's kind of the things, like when you're buying one of these older homes, especially when you're buying a ravine lot, mice in the attic is a big, big problem.
Wow. So these are definitely some things to think about. And I'm glad that, we talked about it, because this is going to be very beneficial for people moving forward. And, especially, when it comes to buying a home or whatever, right, too. So anyway, this is not about me. It's about you. And I think that this is good education for people to be able to, get you in there, just to have a quick walkthrough, just to have, just to see what's going on, get a professional opinion, right? So on top of, the regular every seasonal rodent problem we can have or pest problem we can have, right? So, all right, Peter, I want you to leave our audience with one parting message. Is there any book that you've read or quote that you live by that's helped mold you?
Yes. I read this book about 10, 12 years ago. It's Emotional Intelligence, but I think its name is Dan Goldman or Dan. I think it's Daniel Goldman, but it's Emotional Intelligence. And the cool thing about this book, it doesn't one of the things they talk about is IQ does not mean anything, right? Like regular book smarts does not mean anything. It's great that you can recite facts and stuff like that, but understanding people and reading a situation really, really quickly and making an emotional, intelligent decision, right, is very, very important. So they talk about having high EQ is better than having high IQ, because you can read the situation of what people are going through. You could read things like the body language. Sometimes when people tell you a problem that's not really the problem, there's usually an ulterior motive behind that problem or that question. So you have to they talk about how to, go through those kind of things. And then there's another book that, or a sales training that I learned. It was a Sandler sales system. So it goes back into the art of asking questions and reversals and trying to understand the ulterior motive of why that person asks that question. Because, for example, if someone says, "Is the sky blue?" right, and you automatically say, "Yes, the sky is blue." Well, the sky is actually red, right? You just kind of lost out of what they're trying to, what the ulterior motive of what they're trying to ask, right? Because sometimes the question they're asking is not really the real question. There's actually a motivation behind it. So my role is to try and understand that motivation and help the client. I find that through the industries that I've worked through, and as I got closer to getting to where I am today, I learned that was very, very important. That idea of asking questions, understanding the ulterior motive, and having having an ability to have a high EQ, emotional intelligence. That is, I find that those things are beneficial in not only my daily life but in my professional life as well.
Yeah, that's great. I'll actually try to look them up and even post some links on there so people can maybe look them up and look into it themselves. Absolutely. I really appreciate you joining us today, Peter. This is a pretty eye-opening experience, and hopefully our listeners will see the value in your knowledge, and hopefully give you a call if they need your services. So how could listeners get a hold of you?
Okay. One of a few ways. You can go to www.powerpestcontrol.ca, or you can call me direct. 647-708-7378. Those are the two best ways to get to me. Or if you have a question, you just have a pest problem, or you have a question where you like to just ask, pick my brain and what you think. It's questions are always free. info@powerpestcontrol.ca. So it's info@powerpestcontrol.ca. My website is powerpestcontrol.ca, and you can call me direct, 647-708-7378. Thank you.
And I'm gonna tell everybody to make sure that they go and check out your website, read your blog, go check out your YouTube videos. Pretty interesting stuff. I mean, I like the way you write. I think you have some pretty good writing skills there, and I think people will enjoy reading your material. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it was a pleasure having you today, and I know that people will get a lot of benefit from this. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Rob, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. This is, I really appreciate that I was able to share some information with your listeners.
Good stuff.